A question comes up that is it possible for a civilian to be guarded by a uniformed armed cop? How can a civilian be guarded by a uniformed armed cop of the rank of OCS and below? Yes, you can have as many officers of the rank of OCS and below guard you with AK-47, G3 pistols or anything for as long as you wish at a price. Before I elaborate on this, I want to tell you why I chose to say it now and not before or even after. In the NIS, we have something that we say, why should somebody speak? When you speak something to an NIS officer, the NIS officer can conclude that yes, you are telling the truth, but an NIS officer would also want to additionally know why you chose the time you speak to speak. Why did you not choose to speak earlier than now or later than now? Why this particular time? It is equally important to the NIS to understand the timing of your saying. I may have recorded this earlier, or I may have recorded it later, but what made me record at this particular juncture was Mr. Panya Yahuko, or is it Panya Yauko, uploaded on his social media a syndicate of people complaining of, among other things, that Farouk Kibet had imposed a candidate in Malava in the forthcoming by-election. And that syndicate were wondering why, if that candidate, whom they named as David Dakwa, can impose a candidate at Sugoi. They were trying to say that it is impossible. So they were wondering why Farouk can impose a candidate on Malava, yet that candidate, David Ndakwa, cannot impose a candidate in Sugoi. I don't know. It may be true that Farouk has imposed a candidate in Malava, but has Farouk imposed the voter in the polling booth to vote for that candidate? Well, I'll comment on that later. A lady in that syndicate complained bitterly that she was to dress in a long trouser. I don't know what made her believe that she can be heard more while dressed in long trousers. Those are 18th century thinking that they are trying to use in the 21st century. When Harry Thuku was arrested at today's Central Police Station, there was a lady who stood up and said that she will put on a long trouser and fight the colonialists if the Kikuyu men, were afraid to confront the colonialists. It is the 18th century thinking that a woman becomes manly when she puts on a long trouser. That is what Panyako is campaigning on. But as long as I can remember, the first time I saw a lady putting on a long trouser was in the 60s, 1968. It is possible that they were putting on earlier than that, but since 1968, Women in Kenya have been putting on, as far as I know, putting on long trousers publicly without any. So this lady says that she's going to put on a long trouser to be heard. I said I'll talk about Farouk so-called endorsing of candidate or candidates. What I know in this Malava by-election is that Farouk had covertly endorsed two candidates. Covertly, he had endorsed two candidates, and he was confused on among these two on whom to support. But he had two candidates in mind, none of which was David Ndakwa. If you see the videos of public meetings in those early days, you will see that it was David Ndakwa who acted as the person to invite the two to speak to people in public. One is a business partner of Farouk, and the other is a son to the late Malulu Injendi. That is why the son is still blaming Mudavadi for him not being made the candidate for Malava. Farouk being unable to determine among the two, that is Malulu Injendi's son and his business candidate, plus the realization that an embossed candidate may lose the Malava by-election, made the party UDA to decide that the members will choose whoever they want. That is when UDA decided that they will let the membership of UDA determine who the candidate would be, and that is when they will support that candidate. Another thing that the syndicate, now Panya Yahuko's syndicate, complained about is that David Dakwa is being guarded by 5 armed cops and other irrelevant issues. I am not in a position to know whether it is true or not that David Ndakwa is being guarded by 5 or more or even less cops. I would say this: on any given day, the sub-county security committee do make a security review, and on case-by-case issues, they may decide on issues on areas and individuals that needs enhancing of security. They can say that in this sub-county of ours, a certain area needs more armed patrol or even an armed patrol corps. That is enhanced areas. And they can also say certain individuals need enhanced security. So we don't know, assuming that it is true that Ndakwa is being guarded by even one police officer or even 12 police officers, leave alone 5. How do we know that the district security committee sat down and reviewed that? I have been in the past, in the 90s, been a member of district security committee. These things are ordinary. We review it case by case, time by time. These are things that if called to in a closed court, that one is never discussed in an open court. If called upon in a closed court, they can give their minutes to say that we decided that. After all, the late Malulu Injendi and Panyako are known, have a history of Kasipul Kabondo type of campaigns. So, and again, I don't recommend arguing openly with these people because there are some things that you cannot prove. For example, you can prove that 1,000 grams make, is it 1,000 or, yeah, 1,000 grams make a kilogram. But you cannot prove to a security committee which says that Raphael Saya needs an all-round security. We have done that. We have come to that. How can you prove that in a court of law? And for your information, it is not an open court of law. It is a closed court of law. So they just come up with their writing a secret a document that is stamped secret and saying that we made our own review and saw that Raphael Saya needs security. And the court will just say they are the technical people, so I cannot overrule them. If Panya Yahuko is unhappy, he has a right, just like you and me, to book an appointment with the relevant OCPD and discuss it. He can complain in two ways. He can complain that he himself feels insecure and he needs enhanced security. He can also complain that another candidate apart from him has an enhanced security more than all the other candidates. I can tell you for sure that is like trying to drain water from a river. You can drain 1,000 liters, but the river will still remain at its level. But then, if he is unhappy, he has a right to complain to the district security committee and not have trouser admiring ladies to make a noise. It's nothing he will gain by that. Maybe, just maybe, he will have convinced the electorate to give him a sympathy vote. But the electorate, they have a right of that. If they decide to follow that non-issues and vote for Panyayahuko on the ground of talking nonsense, it is their right. After all, a ballot, one single vote by an illiterate person has the same value as a single vote by a PhD welding professor. I would have expected the electorate in Malava to ask the candidates, not whom ati sasa unafikiri tunaweza peleka mtu huko Sugoi akapigiwa kura? No, no, no. Ask yourself, all the candidates who will be cleared by IEBC are qualified to be the MP. But the position is only for one. Now, who is the candidate who can utilize well the CDF? Who is the candidate who can utilize bursary properly? And who is the candidate who can bring in more investors? Not the candidate who will side with the Luya kingpin. I don't know who will side with the Mudavadi, who will side with the Eugene Wamalwa. Even DAP is attacking DCP. Huh? It has now become a question of DCP, DAP, and UD. No, 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 no. Let them fight their fight there. The candidate, if there is anybody from Malava or any other constituency who is going to vote for a person who can, the work of a representative who can represent you well. And for you to pick trouser admiring ladies to make sense out of what you are doing, then I think you need to go to see a psychiatrist nurse. Another thing we have to say, once the IEBC once the IEBC, through the returning officer, accepts your nominations, at the close of the nomination, we have, is it 10 or 12 candidates who are going to present their nomination? At the person who is to decide who will appear on the ballot paper is none other than the returning officer. The returning officer is not answerable to anybody. The returning officer is not answerable to the IEBC. He is to make just like a judge, to make a decision based on two things: based on the law, and two, based on the papers presented. Do you have the papers that are required by the returning officer? Yes. At the close of the nomination, the returning officer, and he cannot transfer that even to his deputy. This is one of the deputy returning officers, the same powers and the privileges like a returning officer, but there is a handful of things that only the returning officer can do. For example, I will only give two. The returning officer is the only person who can declare. The deputy can accept the things and whatever, but at the close of the nomination, it is the returning officer who will stand up and say, these are the following candidates who will appear on the ballot paper. That one the returning officer cannot delegate. Another thing that the returning officer cannot delegate is that the returning officer is the one to announce the person. It is the returning officer who will announce the person who has been duly elected as the representative, be it MCA, all those seats up to from MCA to the president. It is the returning officer, and this one cannot be delegated. I want to tell you, before we cover what we want to talk today, because today's issue are being guarded by armed or even non-armed police officers. Another thing is, one candidate has got 3,000 votes, and the other one has gotten 2,000 votes. If the returning officer by mouth declares the person with the less votes as having been elected, that one becomes the elected person, and you only have to go to an election court where you say that I got 3,000 and the returning officer declared the other person. If the returning officer by his mouth or her mouth says that candidate B is the winner, even if candidate B was number 2, 3, or even last, then that one becomes the MP. And it can only be reversed by an election court. Once the IEBC, through the returning officer, accepts your nomination, because even right up to now, at the time of shooting this thing, the returning officer had not declared who are the candidates for the election. One or two may be rejected by the returning officer for various reasons. That's a long story. But once you have been declared by the returning officer that you are a candidate, you are free to complain to the IEBC any apparent favorism of any candidate by vyombo vya serikali. You are free to complain. Now to the main point of today. But if you complain about a favorism by vyombo vya serikali, it is just a waste of time. The best thing is spend your time talking to the people, how you can utilize well the CDF, how you can utilize well the bursary, how you can do ABCD better than all other candidates. Hii vitu ya kusema so and so is guarded by more police officers than he may have 20 or 50 police officers guarding. But does that mean that those police officers will vote for him? No. Concentrate on the target unless you want to have the sympathy votes. Talk to the people, the electorate, tell them what you can do better than the others. Because the returning officer, the IEBC, through the returning officer, has satisfied that you and the others are qualified to represent the area. Now it is for you to show how you are better than the others. Now, to the main topic of the day. Can a civilian be guarded by a cop? Whether the cop is armed or not, the answer is yes. A cop, whether armed or not, can guard you for free. For free. You can walk around with police officers in uniform or without uniform, armed or not armed, acting as your bodyguards, acting as your watchmen for free. All you need to do is go to the nearest OCPD. Present your request verbally. The OCPD and the sub-county security committee will sit down and assess your request. They will assess your request, your level of threat, your level of threat. The answer could be a yes or no. They could look at you and conclude that your security is dangerous. And they could conclude it is not. Let me give an example. There are thousands of examples, but let me give you an example where they can conclude that your security should be enhanced. And you're just a kiosk dweller. We have had cases where people have died. Houses have been burnt. Somebody locks the house, burns the whole house. And according to the people around, Raphael Saya is the one who killed those people. Have you ever heard of even cases where somebody says that you went to court and hired and bribed the people and you are released on bond or something? A good example is Kasipul Kabondo. When the MP died, his main opponent, people started saying that he actually even spent some time at the Gigiri police cells. Now, he is out. You see, people who are associated with the late MP may want to harm this candidate. He's now a candidate in Kasipul, isn't it? They may want to harm him because they feel that him being rich, maybe he bribed out and whatever. So the sub-county security committee will sit down and assess your request case by case. I've given the example of Kasipul, where this fellow can go to the nearest security committee and say that because the form Ongondoweri, his followers may want to harm me, thinking that I have something to do with his killers. So you'll find that other candidates for Kasipul Kabondo may complain that he has enhanced security more than them. But if the returning officer inquires from the security committee, they'll say that he was once a suspect for the assassination of the predecessor. So that is why I'm saying that when these people, because most of their things are written in under classified information, and if you take the case to court, it will not be in an open case. Their evidence to a judge or a magistrate will be taken without any doubt. They just say we made assessment and we formed an opinion that Raphael securities should be enhanced. So that is what I'm saying, that the sub-county security committee will sit down and assess your request. The answer could be either a yes or a no. And if the answer is yes, they can give you the numbers that you requested. You can say, I need 5 security. I need 5 cops. They can give you the number that you requested, or more or less. If in their own assessment they form an opinion that you require more security than the 5 you wanted, they'll give you 7 or even 9. Or you may ask for 5 and they say you need 2. So if the answer to your request is yes, they can give you more than you requested or less, or they can give you the number that you requested, depending on their own assessment, If they come up with a solution that does not please you, or if you insist that you want to have cops guarding you, either armed or not, either as bodyguards or as watchmen, then you can get a form from the OCPD. You can get a form from the OCPD. That form is called Private Hire of Police Officers. Private hire of police officers. That is why you find that we have APs at the banks. The banks do fill in those forms that are called private hire of police officers. These are the contents of the forms. One, how many guns are to be used? How many guns are to be used? Because you may be given 5 officers, but 3 of them will be armed, 2 will not be armed. So in their own assessment, based on the request that you have made, they'll come up with a figure of how many guns that are to be used. There are others who may feel that police officers, just their presence and people know these are the police officers around, they may be enough. Or they may decide how many firearms are required. Do you need all of them to be armed, or do you need none of them to be armed? And if it is in between, how many are to be armed? And then there are 3 price levels of the people you are taking. In among the team that you want, you will be asked to state what you want. The majority, over 90% of the people, or even over 95% of the people, will say, I just need askari yeyote, askari 12. So he will be given 12 constables. But there are those who would want police officers at different levels. There are 3 price levels. The hire of a member of the inspectorate is more than that one of an NCO. The number of the price tag for an NCO is more than that one of a constable. Yes, you may say, I want 1 inspector, 2 NCOs, and 10 constables. So each one has its price tag. Each has its own price tag. Hiring of an inspector or a member of the inspectorate is not the same price as hiring those of a lower place. They'll tell you the price tag so that you do that. And lastly, you will also talk of the period that the personnel and guns will be used. You may be having a public meeting which it takes 12 hours. You will pay different from somebody who is hiring the police for a longer period of even, say, 1 month. So it is just like in the supermarket. A supermarket, you'll find that a premium loaf is not the same as ordinary loaf price. You'll also find that in a supermarket, a prime cut beef is not the same as bones for soup. So you'll just say, okay, I want 1 inspector. You'll be told maybe 1 inspector is 5,000 shillings per hour. I want two NCOs. Two NCOs are 2,000 shillings per hour, and 10. So it will be calculated, and then total of number of firearms to be used in your private place. I want now. You are only allowed to state the number of guns, not the type of guns. Say I want 30 guns. Then the OCS is the one who has to determine whether all the guns will be pistols, will be AK-47, will be G3 or whatever. So you'll just say, I want 30 guns. And each gun has its price tag. You want a gun is 10,000 per day. How many days? 30 days. 30 days times 10,000. That is what happens. So you never know. It could be that if it is true that the other candidate whom Panya Huko is complaining that he has police security has that, he does not have to hire trouser admiring women. He needs only to go. After all, he's a secretary he's a general secretary of a trade union. By virtue of being a secretary general of a trade union, he needs police security. Now, when I'm contesting against him, I cannot complain that he has security, whereas the security that he has was granted to him. A person like his boss, Francis Atwoli, I would not be surprised if I go to Atwoli's home and find police officers uh, guarding his place together with the private security company. That is that. On the other hand, should Panya Yahuko or any other candidate form an opinion that security is enhanced to one candidate more than others, then the complaint should be through the RO to the IBC through the returning officer. Then the returning officer will call up for a meeting between all candidates and the sub-county security committee. Once candidates are known, as I said, they have been accepted by the returning officer. They have been declared. The following are the candidates. If one of them, including Panya Huko, believes that if any of the candidate believes that one candidate has an unfair security enhancement or any other treatment, but this time we'll only concentrate on security, then he can complain or she can complain to the returning officer, to the IEBC through the returning officer. Then the returning officer would then call for a meeting between all the candidates and the sub-county security committee. It will be chaired by the returning officer, where that issue of security being given to one candidate more than others would be addressed. And it will be addressed in that meeting, and the findings of that meeting will be final. That is where the meeting will be convinced that the place is Kasipul Kabondo, so all candidates need security. Or the security will come up and say, Bwana Panya Huko, you are a general secretary of a trade union. You need more security than, because by virtue of you being a candidate, you have not resigned as the general secretary of a trade union. So we have to guard you the way you have been guarding you. Or they can produce receipts to show that this candidate, yes, he has those guards and he has hired them. He has hired them. For example, if I had to compare myself to Farouk Kibet, if we were competing, me and Farouk Kibet, the OCPD would tell the returning officer that Farouk, by virtue of being close to the president, he needs enhanced security. Remember, some people may be nobodies. For example, Farouk. Who knew about Farouk 5 years ago? Very few people knew about Farouk. But you see, Farouk is very important to the president in their private capacity. If you want to harm the president and you know that accessing him is very hard. Then you can assess a person like Farouk, and any injury to Farouk would be an indirect injury to the president. I'll give you an example. Captain Belsoi of Molo in 1992. The Kikuyus organized and slaughtered him. Yes, they slaughtered him. A very painful and slow death. They were passing a message to President Moi. They were passing a message to President Moi. And yes, after killing Captain Belsoi, the wreck company that had been sent to Molo to kill Kikuyus was withdrawn. And that is how the Molo clashes went. So you find that an example I've given of me and Farouk Kibet is that sometimes you find that security given to somebody is given by virtue of his position. I want also to remind you that in Kenya we do not talk about how long security of a first lady continues. Right now, the only surviving first lady is Mama Ngina Kenyatta. She's surviving from 1978 to today. That is over 40 years as a widow. The question is, when will the law is silent about her being guarded? So it means that she will be guarded by the government until the day she dies. But when Ruto and Uhuru had differences, the government withdrew her security. Government withdrew her security, which is also an I don't know who advised the government to do that. It was unfair. Supposing anything would have happened to the actually she's the only lady who is supposed to be called Mama wa Taifa. Now, suppose anything would have happened to her during that time. You see, there are some things we do, and the repercussion will be there forever. Because suppose she's maimed, or even worse, it will be a reminder for the next century or so. So what I wanted to say when I gave the example of Mama Ngina is that when the government withdrew her security, but the government cannot withdraw the security of a former president. What Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta did was he downscaled his security. He, and I must thank my age mate for that, decided that it is better for him to be exposed to insecurity than his mother. So this is what I'm saying. If Panya Huko complains that a core candidate is being guarded by security, and the president has decided, by the way, VIP protection, if today the president woke up and said, Kwatenge should be given a security, I'll be given security until the next president comes into power. Or the same president changes his mind. So, how sure are we that this, if it is true that Dakwa is being guarded by police, how sure are we that it is not the Nani has contributed his security? So, I think we should we should not talk about that. But lastly, I wanted to take this opportunity also to say this about security, about what do you call civilian owning security. But before I talk about civilian owning a gun, I want to tell you about something that Raila did. He did it a long time ago. I did not notice it. I just noticed it the other month. But I would also advise politicians to think along those lines. This is what Raila did when he was the prime minister. He took his personal security personal. You know, there are times when Raila has 50 police guards, and another time he has 0 police guards. Depending on the mandamano he makes, he has no guards. After mandamano, he goes to a handshake, cooperation, whatever, you know all those things. And then his security is enhanced. Raila thought of those things long ago, whereby he made all his security be appointed police reservist. I would advise anybody to follow that system. Who is this anybody? Anybody with a realistic chance of becoming the president or even becoming tribal leader. The Kalonzo Musyokas of today, the Rigathi Gachaguas of today, Mudavadis of today, and so on and so forth. Wetangula of today, please turn your private security into police reservists. Let them be appointed police reservists. Let them go for training as police reservists. Why am I saying so? When one person is a police reservist, what he does is just go to the nearest police station, take any gun, and guard you. He will go there with his first number, say, I'm number 41877, Police Constable Raphael Saya, and sign out for a G3 or an AK-47. Nobody can stop. Even the Inspector General cannot stop him. Anyway, that is what Raila taught us, me included. But then, there is also an option of you. Because let me tell you a secret. Be very careful with the guards who guard you. Yes, be careful with them. They could be spying on you by anybody. Even that is why the fellow who died recently, Raila knew that whatever you do, there is no way you can bribe that person to spy on Raila. Enough said of that. I want to say now about civilians owning a gun. Why should you be guarded by a police officer when you yourself can have a gun? Or it is one of the options. Plus, if the police officers are assigned to guard your place and you have hired them or they have come there by virtue of the security assessment, have you ever noticed something? In such a situation, you find that you spend a lot of money. Remember, after the security team has escorted Raila to his house, Raila has from his pocket, that is around midnight, he has to fuel their vehicle from his place to their place, and then he has to also to fuel their vehicle from very early in the morning when they'll be coming back to him and whatever. There is those expenses. So one of the options is for you to apply to own a gun by a civilian. And by saying a civilian, I include members of the discipline services who want to be armed outside the restrictions of their work. The restrictions of their work is, for example, you cannot go home or you cannot visit anybody. You are working here, you cannot go to Oshago, or you cannot visit another town where you have acquaintances or you have business, whatever, with a service gun. Service guns are also supposed to be used for official work only. Now you don't want that restriction, and you are in the discipline services, or you are just a civilian like me and you. You will apply to the chief registrar of the Firearms Bureau through your local OCPD. After he has approved, then you will undergo training and be allowed to purchase the said gun. Should the Bureau in future withdraw your license, they have one thing is that the Bureau can withdraw your license without any explaining to you. But what I know is that, okay, that is a hidden reason that you are in the wrong hand. For example, I can be very close to Ruto, When Ruto is the president, I would be given that. But when Ruto completes his term, whether it is 1 term, 2 term, or long term, the other president comes in and maybe he's anti-Ruto or he's anti-me, you'll find that the bureau will just write a letter to me and withdrawing it. They need, they don't have to have a reason. But then in other occasions, in many occasions, some people, in majority of the cases, 95%, is when you have failed to observe the conditions that you are given when you are there. Let us take an example of Babowino. You remember the incident and such a thing. So, should the Bureau in future withdraw your license, you are supposed to return the firearm and the unused ammunition as soon as possible. As soon as possible. And then you have to swear an affidavit. Sina risasi wala maganda wala bunduki, na nikipatikana na risasi, maganda au bunduki nitashtakiwa kwa mujibu wa sheria. Mwenyezi Mungu nisaidie. And then you sign that. If found to have them, you will be charged just like a person who has never had a license before. You will be charged to have to be in possession of a firearm without a license. So once your license has been withdrawn, you are given enough time to surrender the firearm and ammunition, whether live bullets, blank bullets, rubber bullets, or even it could be live, blank, rubber bullet, or even used cartridge. You are supposed to return them as soon as possible, as soon as practicable, to the nearest police station. And the nearest police station will forward that. For example, it is withdrawn while you are in Mandera and you are somebody who comes from Webuye. So you will be given time to give out the gun that you have. If some of the things that are covered by that law is in around the country, you'll go around picking them all and giving them out. Anytime you'll be found with any of those things, you'll be charged. But then you can be charged, but later on they find that your things were so scattered that it was just by human nature that the notification came late and you had no time to do that. If it is found to be that way, then you can be forgiven. Thank you.